So if you want to hear my thoughts on this debate, man, look, we did hear some good things. I think that especially Burgum was impressive with some of his, immigration policies, and I think that it was easier to see where Burgum's strengths and weaknesses lie. Burgum's strength lies with when you're talking about immigration, when you're talking about trade, the economy, those types of things. But he's very weak on what I would say maybe moral issues, right? Social issues, as well as the war in Ukraine. That's where he kind of starts to fall apart, and that's where he becomes indistinguishable from most Democrats, if we're just going to be honest. So Burgum, I think he gained the most. I do think that Vivek Ramaswamy did gain a bunch because his candor was entirely different. He was a lot more uniting as a figure. His rhetoric was a lot calmer. He did not resort to any personal attacks like he did in the first debate. I think the one mistake that he did was by not apologizing for his candor in the first debate. Beyond that, I think this was a perfect debate for Vivek Ramaswamy. Nikki Haley, she came across as, not just a war hawk, which she already was, but fairly unlikable as well, giving unnecessary attacks to other people. And yes, Tim Scott did do an unnecessary attack against Nikki Haley, even though it was kind of an interesting conversation. And I feel like Tim Scott did have some sort of substantive policy argument that he wanted to bring up before he was cut off. But still, Nikki Haley, I think, just came off as kind of like aggressive in a way that just doesn't really work, especially for the type of middle of the road, targeting moderates and Democrats like Nikki Haley is. Being aggressive and mean on the stage doesn't work for you the same way as it does for someone who's maybe a little bit more populist like Vivek Ramaswamy, or it would for someone who's a little bit further to the right like Ron DeSantis. Now, Ron DeSantis, I think he had some fine answers to various things. I do think that it was nice that he got called out on some of his policies. But I think what hurt him most is actually his facial expressions during the debate. He looked extremely pained. He looked like a man who had to give a speech right after breaking up with his girlfriend. Like, this was not the Ron DeSantis at his most confident. This was Ron DeSantis who was, giving great answers while fighting through the tears. And I don't know if he was sad or angry or upset or frustrated because his donors wanted to drop out of the presidential race. But Ron DeSantis just on the stage did not look anywhere near as confident as you would want a president to be. Like Mike Pence stands over there and gives fine answers, right, on things like the economy, but he looks confident when he does it, right? He speaks as if he is already the president, the same way that I think Vivek Ramaswamy does, even though their styles are different. And that's one thing that I think makes people be gravitated towards him whenever they do hear Mike Pence speak. But Mike Pence didn't really say anything that made him stick out, in my opinion. He had some finances on the economy. Great. He took some credit for some things that happened in the Trump administration, and then he blamed all the bad things during the Trump administration on Donald Trump. That's to be expected. That's what he normally does. But he didn't really say anything that made him stick out to me as a conservative or as a Republican candidate for president of the United States. And Chris Christie, I'll say this. He had some great answers on government spending. Generally, he didn't really he didn't really impress me very much. And I still don't think that many people are going to buy what Chris Christie is selling. But he did point out something, very, very massive about Donald Trump, and is that he is running away from all of the other candidates. And I've been saying this since day one. I don't know why no one else has been saying this, but he's just been running away like a scared little schoolgirl because he is afraid of getting beaten on the playground. Now, whether it's, because he's afraid of maybe stumbling his words, that also could certainly be an aspect. But let's be honest. The country would be benefited if Donald Trump went on the stage and demonstrated how he is a better presidential candidate than any of the other people on the stage. But did he decide to do that? No. He decided to run away and hide behind some union workers who were wearing some blue collars. I don't think that was smart. I don't think that was wise. And I am sorry that I actually have to give this to Chris Christie, but I don't think that this was respectful of the voters, because as voters, we deserve to know the differences between these two candidates. And yes, you can just look at different speeches, you can look at voting patterns, you can look at policy implementations, but also it's helpful just to have them side by side. And we kind of do get this with the town hall format, which, by the way, the more I see these debates, the more I feel like the town hall format is just the proper way to go. We had the Blazes Summit, right? It was called the Summit. They had a little town hall that was independent. It was hosted by Tucker Carlson, and that was wonderful. That was amazing. And I got a far better grasp on each individual candidate's policies like in isolation than I have from any of these debates. Now, I will say that the first debate I think was a bit more helpful in establishing the differences between the different candidates. But if you just want to understand what each individual candidate believes, I think the town hall format is a lot more helpful and it's a lot better. So I do hope that we have more of those in the future. But, if I'm going to be honest, I would have to say the big winners are Burgum and Ramaswamy. And the big losers, I would say, are, I think Nikki Haley, maybe. Maybe Ron DeSantis, but I think most people on the stage just didn't really help themselves, didn't really hurt themselves too much. I think Burgum and Vivek are the only ones who really gained. And while Chris Christie, I don't think he gained at all, I think he also made Trump one of the biggest losers, if not the biggest loser of the night. And I always think that, every single debate that Trump skips is one that he loses. And I think that Chris Christie really explained why that's the case in a way that he didn't in the first debate. So it's very, very interesting. It'll be really interesting to see how the election shakes out. Who ends up being the GOP nominee for president